Okay, my name is Sam Dorman from The Build Tank. It is a consulting firm. We help organizations not just build great technology, but also build the teams, the staff, the internal capacity to steward it and be successful with it. And I'm really happy that Stephanie gave that presentation. It was sort of a tour de force of what it looks like to really go all out and focus a lot of people and resources and energy and capacity on this kind of system. I suspect for a lot of people in this room, or for a lot of people in this community, that's not the norm. And some of you may have been looking at that and being like, oh my God, I can only get, I have 3 jobs and one of them's supposed to be owning this entire thing, or I've been begging for one hire, that kind of thing. So that's really the perspective that we've seen quite a bit. And we, over the years, have worked with a lot of different groups and have noticed that really the successful groups are the way, we can set up great technology, but the ones that are successful, oh, thank you, that's handy. The groups that are really successful are not the ones whose technology is set up any better. There's tons of firms who will set you up beautifully. The difference is how good is your internal capacity, how good is your internal leadership, and are you approaching it with enough sophistication? We are long past the stage of sophistication in technology, especially with a system like Salesforce, where you can just hope it's going to take care of itself. And so we took everything that we sort of learned and we put it into this white paper, and we wrote this blog post for Salesforce.org called Why Staffing Your CRM Team Matters, and it links to the white paper. Does this work? Yeah, there's the white paper, which you can get at thebuildtank.com, which has all of the slides I'm going to show today. So if you go to thebuildtank.com, you can download it, and so you don't have to worry about capturing everything or writing everything down today. I also put a bunch of business cards on the chair by the back door where you can get that, so you have the URL with you, thebuildtank.com. Okay, and we've done this, we've tested this at a lot of different levels of scale, a number of different organizations, big enterprise organizations, small community organizations, and it really scales up and down, and that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a picture from the Chronicle Philanthropy of Ananda Roby at the Center for Action and Contemplation. She is a living, breathing, amazing example of what it looks like to start building really smart internal capacity that's sort of has a broader, more ambitious definition than you're used to. She's taken this organization to amazing places. She's built her team. She's an absolute rising superstar, but you start to see these results. Yeah, there you go, right, Matthew. I was like, who is that troublemaker? Okay, so I want to just tell you the key takeaways that I'm going to cover today, sort of spoil it before we get there. The technology platform will not manage itself. This is what I was talking about. This is probably familiar to all of you, but it's not necessarily obvious to everyone in our space. It requires skilled, dedicated capacity, so it works well, so people are supported, and so new opportunities are seized. It's not just going to take care of itself. The areas of work requiring coverage, which we'll talk about today, are broader than often expected, from leadership to technical to human. We'll talk more about that. You can outsource many technical functions. You cannot outsource some key things, including creating and managing a product roadmap, supporting staff adoption, and critical leadership and communication responsibilities. And you have to invest in your team's scale and capabilities before it becomes a crisis. Okay? Doing that brings strategic and tactical advantage to your organization. It's not a charitable endeavor to invest in capacity. It's because of the benefits you're going to reap from it. Okay? So I'll cover 3 areas here, and this is the same structure as the white paper covers. What are the essential areas of work to cover? Why do we actually need someone, right? Anyone. What you can outsource and what you shouldn't. And then what do the roles look like? How do you divide up roles? And it was really interesting to see how Stephanie's team divides up those roles. You'll see a couple different ways you could go about it, but this is the way that we've sort of hit on. We'll talk more about it. And I think I mentioned there's this range of skill sets required. So we've boiled it down this way. It's this triangle between the leadership, technical, and human. Everybody always thinks about, Salesforce, we need someone, and it's usually the technical pieces, and those are important, no question. But there is a lot more to it. Those of you who do this kind of work know this, right? There's human skills that need to be supported, and there's a lot of leadership that needs to be brought to the table. Okay, so step one, what areas of work must be covered? And like I said, this is sort of like, why do I need an internal staffer or team? And this applies even if you've only got one person on it, okay? What are all the areas of work that need to be covered? And it tends to be a lot broader than people think. So we'll start from sort of most obvious or often commonly thought of to least commonly thought of. The first is what we call database administration. That's all that setup menu stuff or reports and dashboards, configuration, licenses, users. Okay, that's all pretty standard. We get that. That's where people's brains usually go first. What else? Well, architecture and development. Stephanie talked about this too. Well, someone's got to be doing the business analysis. What are the needs and what's the right architecture and how can we make sure this is smart for the long term, and setting up this, doing advanced coding and configuration and workflow, QA testing to make sure things hit the mark. Okay, architecture and development, good. What else? Well, use of support and trainings. No good unless people are trained and supported in how to use it. And what goes along with training and supporting people is intake for bugs, intake for new ideas, features, whatever it might be. That's a really essential area. Tools and integrations. You guys know that one of the strengths of the Salesforce platform is that there's a zillion tools you could plug in for payment processing and form collection, whatever it is. Each one of those is a whole area of expertise to be mastered. And you got to know the ins and outs, and you got to train people on it. You got to configure the tools. You got to keep them updated. You got to do analysis on new tools. You can start to see the range of work that has to be done. Data guardianship is our term for everything related to data, right? It don't mean a thing if it ain't got really high quality data. It doesn't have the same ring to it. So, monitoring the data, doing the cleanups, making sure there's no duplicates, all that kind of stuff. Data governance, that's a huge area. Ironically, probably one of the areas people know is the most important, but also one of the first areas to slip through the cracks when things get busy, when you don't have enough capacity on it. And what's at the top of the pyramid here is product management and leadership, which it's probably one of the most essential, if not the most essential areas, and very rarely gets the attention it deserves. So this product roadmap, what is this thing going to do next? What are we going to focus on next? Diplomacy and communication. Actually, when I was presenting this with Ananda, whose picture I showed earlier, at one point she stopped and said, I had no idea how much of my job was going to be diplomacy and communication. It's a vast amount of job when you're trying to make amount of work when you're trying to make this happen within a sophisticated organization. All the change management, budgeting, management team, consultant engagement. Okay, those are all the areas. So you can see that's a huge range of work to be done, right? All coming down on one person, or maybe it's more than one person. But it covers these three areas: leadership, technical, and human. And so we sort of present this to really try to drive home this idea that, no, you don't just need like a tech person in the back closet, You need a sophisticated approach to these kinds of systems. Okay, so how do we do all of that? Well, one of the main ways that we make that happen is we outsource things, right? That makes a lot of sense. You can't do it all necessarily, or at least not at first. You can't do it all until you get to a pretty high level of sophistication. So what can you outsource and what shouldn't you? Well, we say, okay, there's a couple areas that are very outsourceable, and in fact, most groups do that. Architecture and development. Like Stephanie was saying, she has someone that does that. A lot of people start with a partner. The partner does the business analysis, does the architecture development, advanced coding, whatever it might be. And that's great. That's very outsourceable work. We did sort of de-highlight QA testing because that's got to be done inside. You need someone on the inside to say whether it hits the mark or not. But architecture development, very outsourceable. Tools and integrations, very outsourceable. You want someone who's just deep on the platform, who has seen all those things. You want to be involved in that, but you can really outsource that. Next we have that's the outsourcing icon, the official outsourcing icon. Now, next we have a category called semi-outsourceable. Database administration, that's all the sort of setup menu, reports and dashboards type stuff, and data guardianship. This is all work where you say that really should be in-house eventually. That makes all the sense in the world to bring in-house. But if you're short on capacity, if you're just starting out, if you're limited, that's also semi-outsourceable that can kind of be done from a ticketing queue. You know, you could give people. Am I gone? Oh, here we go. You could give people, you get a good partner, you give them lists of stuff to do, they can knock that kind of stuff out. That's semi-outsourceable. So what is it that is absolutely not outsourceable? These two main areas. One is user support and trainings. You can get trainings from a partner, that's great, but it's just simply not enough to get a couple trainings and then assume that people are going to have the tools that they need to do their job, right? People move jobs change, roles change, the system changes. You have to do an ongoing sequence of trainings for people. Same goes with support. People have to have someone that they can ask, wait, how do I add that new record? How do I, run that report? And if they don't have someone they can turn to immediately, they're busy, they're going to turn to their shadow spreadsheets or do whatever they have to do, or data's going to go in wrong. So you have to really have support that's there, accessible to them. And what goes along with both those things, again, is request, intake, and triage. Not outsourceable. And the other area that may be obvious that's not outsourceable is product management and leadership. These things are simply not possible for someone external to do effectively. You can't ask for someone to prioritize your internal needs from an external perspective. It just doesn't work, right? You need someone who can balance all the needs, talk to leadership, do all that kind of leadership work. Same with diplomacy and communication. You can't ask an outside person to do that. This is the highest order work that has to be done by someone internally. So, okay, right, there we go. That's the internal. And this is critical high-value work requiring a specific strategic skill set, right? You can't just drop that on anybody's lap. That's obviously very skilled work that has to be done. And a lot of people are capable of it, but you shouldn't be handing out that duty by default. You should be giving that to someone with the leadership skills and the general skills that can execute it. And a lot of people in this room have probably developed those skills and done that themselves. Okay, so what does it actually look like when we want to divide up into roles? How does that team evolve? And we try to do this at a couple different levels of scale. A lot of groups are fighting just to get one person. Okay, so what does it look like when we're a team of one? Well, you usually start with the consultant firm doing, like we said, some of the architecture and development stuff, a lot of the tool analysis, and maybe some of the maintenance, some of the data prep, data cleanup, permissions and security. Makes sense to outsource a bunch of stuff. So what is someone internally doing is usually an admin at this level. Well, some light customization. Can't see the colors that well, but they kind of line up with the colors at the bottom. Tools and integration, requirements, unearthing shadow systems around the organization, doing some of those ongoing trainings, doing some user support, engaging the consultant, diplomacy and communication. It's a lot. But of course, there's a lot more requests and naked triage, reports and dashboards, and it goes on. All this kind of stuff that has to be done falls on that one person. And sometimes you get a superstar or a unicorn or someone who can balance it all or at a certain level of scale. But there tends to be a point when you need to bring in more firepower. So what does that look like? Well, we like to use that leadership, technical, human triangle to sort of divide up the roles. And so in this sort of growing the team phase, what we say is, okay, now you're starting to have the beginnings of product management on the part of your product manager. And you can start to do some of that stuff under the leadership triangle. Diplomacy and communication, the roadmap, consultant engagement. You can start to have someone with some oversight over your strategy. And then you have someone who's really focused on the human side of the equation. It's really, and of course, someone who can be more focused on the technical side of the equation, take some of those pieces from the consultant firm. What's great about this is it's not necessarily the same skill sets or the same people that you would hire for both sides of that, right? The expert mechanic who can go under the hood and do all of that kind of stuff, that's a really valuable skill, but it's very different from it can be very different from going out and training people and supporting people and being that friendly face that everybody is willing to go to. And so you can get people that can do both sides of that, but if you know what you're looking for, you might even hire very differently. That's what it looks like at this scale. Now, of course, and then consultant and firm is still doing some of this, especially the architecture and development pieces. Of course, that burden tends to grow as well. right? And so then these guys look a little more worried now as that burden tends to grow. But this is, again, what I was talking about earlier, is what commonly happens is organizations will wait until people are just bursting at the seams and about to quit and burn out. And then they try to backfill. Okay, well, we'll hire you some help, right? It's probably obvious, but it bears repeating that if you can get ahead of that curve, you're in such stronger position, because how long does it take someone to get up to speed anyway, right? To really understand their job and to have the relationships with people and to start to know where they can be effective. So if you can get ahead of that curve when you're talking about hiring capacity, it's a much stronger way to go, and you burn people out less and you tend to get much better results. It's rare that anyone in this line of work is sitting around without enough to do. If that happens, it happens for maybe 2 weeks. Okay, so at the next level scale, this is where we call it the scale of specialized focus. This is where you start to see the colors lining up a little bit. The product manager doing a lot of that product management leadership stuff. I'll start from the right side there. The data guardian is that person that just likes to be a ballistic missile for data integrity. And the database administrator is your expert mechanic. You've got someone focused on all your range of tools. Over here, you've got the training specialist, like I talked about, who's just like, can I make sure that people have all the training and all the support they need? And then you've got this one other position I just want to highlight briefly, the business analyst, which is kind of this amazing phenomenon where you start to see people. This is where teams really go to the next level from a reactive framework to more of a proactive framework. And this position is someone who gets out from behind the ticketing queue, gets out from behind their computer, and goes and gets in people's faces and, hey, can I help you? Can I sit in on your meetings? Can I see what you guys are doing? Let me see that spreadsheet that you're using. And you go from, instead of just passively receiving requests for improvement or bugs or whatever, you go to strategically trying to help the organization improve in all areas. It's a really effective model that we've seen to have someone in that kind of a role. There it is. So what does it look like? This is just the last part here. What does it look like in org charts? Well, at the level of the initial level, you've got one person they're working with, and they're doing everything, and they're working with an external firm. As you start to scale up, you've got your product manager now, you've got your technical, and you've got your human side still working with the external firm. And of course, you can double up on any one of these sides. Usually organizations would double up first on the technical side. And as you start to grow bigger, you've now got that distribution. You've got 2.5 roles on the technical side, 2.5 roles on the human adoption side. You've still got the product manager doing the leadership duties, and you've got the external firm and consultant. And then, of course, as you continue to scale, which we've seen at some of the large scale orgs, those can double up as well. So again, the key takeaways: it won't manage itself. It requires skilled and dedicated capacity. The areas of work are broader than people often expect, leadership to technical to human. You can outsource a lot, but you can't outsource the leadership and the support. And you do well to invest in your team scale and capabilities before it becomes a crisis, and because of the strategic and tactical advantages it brings to your organization. And all of this is on the white paper at thebuildtank.com. So if it's useful at all, we just want it to get out there and help more organizations do great work. Thanks. Questions? A few minutes for questions.
There's a mic in the middle.
Oh, mic in the middle.
Or you can just shout it out.
Okay, I'm gonna shout.
I'm all about shouting.
Yeah.
I saw on one of your last slides that you had training and QA in the same block. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, okay.
QA is such a distinct.
Yeah, training and QA in the same block. Why did we group up training and QA together? So my partner, Chris Zaitza, is best at making this, at articulating this. But I'll attempt to. So we find that the person whose job to train, if you're doing the QA, you're thinking forward to rolling this out to somebody. And that gives you a certain lens on the QA process that we find to be really helpful. So if you're just doing general QA, you're sort of going down the list, okay, does it do this, 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 and this? But if you're thinking, oh, I gotta go train Janet on this, you're seeing it through Janet's eyes a little bit when you're doing the QA, and we find that it tends to bring a lens that's a little more specific So it's something that we've toyed with, and it's worked out really well. Yeah.
I'm going to use the microphone because there have been too many happy hours trying to talk over. I'm losing it. Stephanie pointed out a lot of really important roles, but as the implementation partner, one of the critical roles was Stephanie because she said no. And you saw the words up there, MVP, minimum viable product. We had a timeline and a budget. It wasn't very long. And can you imagine, trying to sell a minimum viable product at your org? You get a lot of pushback. So you need that role too in the implementation. You need, the person who will say no. I have another client. The guy who says no there has a 31-inch Darth Vader on his desk. So it's not something you hide. You're the person, but for minimum viable product, you've got to have that authority to keep it in scope or you will not hit your timeline. And so I want to call out that other role that was very important to us.
I feel like he was a plant. I like it. Thanks, Bennett. You sir in the front row.
Question, Stephanie. So thank you.
Yeah.
That was really interesting. I'm just curious as to how and if you actually use this model internally early on in your project to kind of win the argument, business case, to build that team that you showed from the outset, or is that how you ended up after kind of taking a number of wrong routes, dead ends, and things like that?
So my goal was always to use this model, right? I need a product owner. I want all the people. I would love to build an internal team of like 50 people. It started out with just me and Melissa, and then we had Bennett, and then we had Nicole, and we got to launch, and then all of a sudden I had a project manager, and now I have another product owner, and now I'm looking at a system admin. It's just gradually. So going through it, we know we didn't need it right off the bat, but it is, I would love to build a little fiefdom inside of my product delivery group at CARE, and have product owners for all of my products. Right now I'm the product owner for like 12 of them. And then, so I get to offload CRM, which was nice. Susie's doing an amazing job saying no. I have the penguin of disgust on my desk. I don't have a Darth Vader. I have a penguin that's like, that's the penguin. So yeah, I think that, and I don't know if that's just a model that I learned from being in product management, project management for so long, but that's sort of like the model that I came from. And Sam is 100% on target. You have one person and it's just, you're gonna burn them out completely and you're never gonna get anywhere. And then, you have to offload that somewhere, but this is definitely the model that we strive for and are going to, I was so happy standing over there when you were singing the song of the business analyst. I was like, it's gonna change my life. Where's that person? So they're my next hire. And I wish I would have had them the first go round, but we didn't, and we didn't have the budget for it. And now next go round, we're gonna go into Marketing Cloud with a BA and a SME dedicated to this. Maybe that's the secret sauce.
You just mentioned the word project manager there on the slides. Can you comment on product owner being project manager and being two different roles or one role?
Yeah, so for me, a product owner is like I own the product roadmap. I am the person that's gonna say these are the next 5 things. We're gonna do that as the product owner. My project manager is very tactile and she's in the weeds and she's taking meeting notes and she's scheduling timelines and making sure that when Nicole says she's gonna deliver something or when Round Corner Bennett and his team say they're gonna deliver something, they're gonna deliver it. She's sitting on those scrum calls. She's that tactile person, and then the product owner for us is one level up of I have an overall look at the field instead of just being very tactically involved in all the day-to-day things.
That's brilliant. We're a implementation partner, but we generally find clients appoint a project manager as a senior person, but we find the product owner role is the most important role to integrate. Often they're more junior, we find, in charities, which isn't great.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question just about size of organization and like dividing out that work against the roles.
Yeah.
I understand that it varies depending on the work that the work does and the tech needs, but do you have any sort of guidance on that?
Size of organization, like how big the team should be based on size of the organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. We tend to think that it's about the ambition and scale of what you're trying to do with the system. Because you could have a big organization and you could say, well, we know this is going to eventually get big, so we better put a lot of people on it. But usually it's going to start sort of in a more contained way. So that's why we did it by scale of ambition. You could have a very small organization that's trying to do 1 million things on the system, and then you better resource it well. And you could have a very big organization that's going to start with a real targeted instance. Oh, I'm seeing we're getting the walk of time here. So yeah, that's how we generally
And that's the
do it.
approach we took.
Yeah.
We have big system, big company, target on that, and then we'll move out and make it bigger.
Yeah. We're out of time, aren't we? Okay.
We have 30 seconds. I don't know. Can you do it in 30 seconds?
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.